Love and Monsters remains one of the most divisive stories of the Davies era, if not the revival in general. It's the show's first Doctor-like episode, a production featuring as little of the lead actor as possible in order to make the season's arduous production schedule just a little bit easier. The Christmas special, The Christmas Invasion, had added another episode to the mix, and so the idea was that Love and Monsters could be shot during the production block of The Impossible Planet and The Satan Pit in order to allow for a standard-length season without increasing an already impressive workload for the leads. As such, it's easy to imagine that the Doctor-like episodes could be throwaway adventures, episodes chopped together to meet the quota of stories for a given season, churn them out and focus on the attention of the bigger and more important stories ahead. Instead, the Doctor-like episodes have proven to be some of the more experimental and creative episodes of the entire Davies era. While critical and fan opinion remains divided on Love and Monsters, the subsequent Doctor and Companion-like episodes like Blink, Midnight and Turn Left are counted among the best of their respective seasons. Love and Monsters is essentially an exploration of Doctor Who. More specifically, it's about Doctor Who fandom and a romantic ode to the importance that the show can have in some people's lives. The opening does actually really grab your attention as you're plonked somewhere in the middle of a story told from the point of view of an outsider. That's the sort of subversion of the norm that you expect throughout Love and Monsters, and man does it subvert. I've seen countless Doctor Who monsters, from both classic and the new series, that look a damn sight less convincing than the Hoyks, by the way. For a monster that has been cobbled together at the last minute, it's extraordinarily good. Miles better than the Absorbaloff, strangely enough, that had a lot of planning. One scene I cannot excuse from this opening sequence, however, is the Scooby-Doo chase sequence that ensues. I mean, what were they really thinking? Look, I get Doctor Who is silly, but really? To be fair, Love and Monsters has a significant advantage as an episode without too much David Tennant or Billie Piper. Mark Warren is a fantastic young actor, and the episode manages to do a lot of heavy lifting by casting Warren as the episode's lead character. Warren was a British actor who tends to bounce around British television, but his work is consistent and high profile enough that he's recognisable to most fans of contemporary British television, without really having a persona or being a big name. As Love and Monsters leans heavily on Elton, with a significant amount of the episode's runtime devoted to Elton narrating the story to his webcam, Mark Warren is pretty key to the episode's success. While Davies' script is clever and playful, it relies on a performer who can bring that to life. Warren's work here is essential, in much the same way that Carey Mulligan's work in Blink contributes significantly to the success of that Doctor-like episode. Love and Monsters is all about a Doctor Who fan. Elton is a big fan of the character and the world he represents. Being 20-something, Elton's memories of his first encounter with the Doctor will be familiar to some of the older memories of the audience watching at home. What was it? He asked himself. I must have been 3 or 4 years old, middle of the night. Davies stops just short of having Elton hiding behind the couch, because he could have just easily been describing childhood memories of catching the end of the Colin Baker era or even the Sylvester McCoy years. Despite the decision to present Elton as something of an awkward introvert, perhaps a little too awkward, it's clear that Davies has a strong affection for Elton's type of Doctor Who fandom, and actually one that he only knows too well himself, as a long-time fan of the series. RTD paints an endearing portrait of the select few fans that Elton meets up with in his attempts to engage with the Doctor, to venture deeper into the Doctor's world, inhabited by those with their stories of the Doctor. And you know what? I actually really appreciate this. Davies presents Doctor as a force that brings people together, to share common interests. Linda quickly become friends. They become less and less about the Doctor and spend more time getting to know one another and helping each other out. They even form a band because it's fun. And man, I love ELO. It's meant to be a hobby, something for people to share and love together. This is something that Davies hits on quite frequently in his work on Doctor Who, arguing that there's no point in wondrous stuff if we're just going to look it away. Although Love and Monsters never emphasises it quite as heavily as it probably should, Davies is quick to argue that Elton is actually well adjusted, relatively. He has a life outside the Doctor. He has a professional job and a house. I should say, this isn't, my whole life, he insists, perhaps too hard. It's not all spaceships and stuff, because I'm into all sorts. I like football, I like a drink, I like Spain. And if there's one thing I really, really love, Jeff Lynne and the Electric Light Orchestra. Because you can't beat a bit of ELO. Elton's ELO fandom is actually rather an inelegant but effective way for Davies to keep looping the lyric, "Hey you with the pretty face, welcome to the human race," into the episode. Another conscious effort to reinforce the idea that nerdiness must be offset with a real life outside fandom, or even through fandom. Fandom for the sake of fandom itself, Davies seems to argue, is self-defeating at best, and toxic at worst. But I do actually quite appreciate the sentiment.
Because I'm into all sorts of things. I like football, I like a drink, I like Spain, and if there's one thing I really, really love, then it's Jeff Lynne and the Electric Light Orchestra. because you can't beat a bit of ELO.
Which then brings us to Victor Kennedy, aka the Absorbaloff, the superfan as it were. Kennedy is a controversial character, and not just because his monster form was designed by the winner of a Blue Peter competition, but because of the use of Peter Kay as quite blatant stunt casting. Instead, Kennedy seems like a particularly bitter and direct attack upon a certain kind of fan, if not a certain individual fan. While Linda are using their interest in the Doctor to enrich their lives, Kennedy arrives to try and control and pervert their fandom to his own ends. And yes, the reveal that Kennedy is actually Absorbaloff, yes. I mean, I quite like that line.
You've dabbled with aliens, now meet the genuine article.
And the Absorbaloff is actually quite a fine idea in theory, but I thought we had all but disposed the idea of men in ridiculous rubber suits. If I were Willie Grantham, the kid who came up with the design, I would ask for my money back. It should have been rendered in CGI with the faces being far more animated and bulging in and out of the layers of fat for more effect. The scene where it wobbles after Odin down the street is actually one of the genuinely rubbish moments in all of New Who. I'm not saying it was a bad concept in theory, but more so in execution. In all honesty, it's so bad, it just provides many laughable moments. One in particular is his switch to a distinctive northern accent, once transformed into the Absorbaloff, obviously with Peter Kay using his normal accent. But it's very strange considering his RP accent while as Victor Kennedy. At this stage, I think it's just beyond all comprehension, and questioning really. In fairness, Peter Kay isn't actually bad as a human form of Victor Kennedy. One of Britain's most successful stand-up comedians, Kay is an occasional actor, and he won a role in Doctor Who after sending Rusty Davies a letter praising the new series. Kay was reportedly committed enough to spend significant time with Davies during the writing process, fleshing out the character, and that doesn't really come across in his work as the Absorbaloff, but does in his work as Victor Kennedy, as he conveys an unsettling mix of an oily charm and primal hunger. His performance as Victor isn't a revelation, but if it were the worst part of the episode, then Love and Monsters would be in pretty good shape. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said of Kay's work as the Absorbaloff. Buried under tons of frankly disgusting prosthetics, Kay's work as a monster is an over-the-top, pantomime-style performance. Whatever nuance Kay was able to bring to the Victor Kennedy character is lost after his transformation to the Absorbaloff. Love and Monsters said...
What's the matter? Have you given up so soon?
There's no point. Where would I go? Everything I ever wanted.
Has been absorbed.
Oh, Elton, don't say that.
But it's true.
Then join us. Join us, little man. Come on. It's everlasting peace. Come on, join us. Dissolve into me.
Love and Monsters certainly isn't the smoothest of episodes. It seems like it was hastily put together. Elton occasionally seems more of a stereotype than a character, and if the scenes with Victor Kennedy are a little on the nose, even if Peter Kay is brilliant in the role. There's also the occasional ill-judged sequence, in particular the infamous closing scene which revealed that Ursula has been turned into a paving slab, but that's okay. We've even got a bit of a love life, Elton boasts. Oh, let's not get into that, Ursula remarks. It's a short exchange that probably seemed witty at the time, but it's also something that raises all sort of uncomfortable gender issues, in that apparently a woman with a mouse is all that needed for a couple to have a healthy love life, which has unfortunate connotations really. Again, it's a bit of a minefield, but the way the episode ends with Elton boasting about his love life with a paving stone does raise some awkward questions that the show just really tries to laugh off. It's just a bit cringy to say the least. Overall, Love and Monsters is a pretty bold experiment for the show, and a pretty ingenious way of working around a production restriction, to give it its due credit. It's not everything that it could be, and it's notably weaker than the later Doctor Light episodes, but it's still an experiment that was well worth attempting, and actually I'm rather glad they did. Especially as it laid down the foundation for future stories without the lead characters, and for that I'm actually really grateful. That said, many things in this episode are actually quite inexcusable and rather cringeworthy to say the least. Therefore, I give this episode a 5.